Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you to help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. And before we get started on today's video, I just want to quickly let you know that mine and Steph's podcast, Life After Diets, is now available on YouTube. We've decided to release the episodes one day early, only on YouTube, so you can check out the channel. I will link to it below. Today I wanted to talk to you about the biggest realizations I had that had the most impact on my own recovery from binge eating. I often get asked, what was the turning point in your recovery? I think we're fed this idea in our culture of the hero's journey, where you are struggling with something and then you learn this big life lesson and you defeat your problem, and then you're free and you're self-actualized into the person that you were always meant to be. People also sometimes think about it in terms of hitting rock bottom. If you can just hit rock bottom, then the only way is to come back up again. I think this thinking can be problematic because we're looking for that one big explosive event or realization that's going to change everything for you. And for me, there was lots of little pivots that moved me away from this self-sabotaging path that I was onto towards like just peace and more contentment and feeling happier and more comfortable in my own skin. The things that change us and that are most powerful are the things that we realize for ourselves. So you can hear a lot of information out there about how to recover from binge eating, and you can kind of know it to be true up here, but until we realize it to be true, almost at the cellular level, it doesn't tend to have the impact on our behavior and how we are navigating the world. So these are three things that I believe in my very cells to be true for me, and things that I needed to learn and understand in order to recover from binge eating. So the first one is around restriction. So you've probably heard that undereating, dieting, restriction, all of these ways of controlling food can trigger off binge eating. And I'll often speak to people who will tell me that actually they're really good at dieting, but that it always leads to binging again. They know how to lose the weight, but when they try and go into some kind of maintenance, their binge eating returns. I was never quote unquote good at dieting. I wasn't able to restrict or control my food. And so for this reason, I always assumed that, well, that restriction stuff doesn't apply to me because I'm not undereating. I know I'm overeating. My body's getting bigger. I'm feeling heavy all the time. I'm eating a lot and often. I'm thinking about food constantly, and I'm not thinking about food because I'm hungry, because I'm still feeling full from the last binge. So I ignored all that stuff until I realized and really saw for myself how this planning to restrict was triggering binge eating for me. Now, I never saw it as planning to restrict. I always saw it as planning to take control, be more disciplined, eat in a healthy way, cutting out certain foods. All these things that a lot of the time or out there in our culture are considered as worthy things to pursue. They're not considered to be problematic. So I really relate to the Last Supper eating because it was always going to be tomorrow. I was going to be stricter, more disciplined, cutting out foods that I knew were problematic for me. So I wouldn't have said that I was planning to restrict. I wouldn't have said that I was planning to diet. I just would have said I'm planning to get my act together tomorrow. But if you'd asked me at that time to tell you what a quote unquote good day of eating would have been, it wouldn't have been enough food to have survived on for a long period of time. It was undereating that I was planning to do. I just wasn't, I say I wasn't being honest with myself about it, but I didn't, it was in my blind spot. I didn't know that that's what I was doing. And when I realized that was what I was doing, and I consciously chose to stop doing that, to stop saying that tomorrow it was going to be different, tomorrow I can't have these foods, which then made them even more appealing now. I had to eat them all while I could. When I stopped doing that, my binge eating significantly reduced in intensities, but it didn't get rid of it completely. For some people, the restriction part's enough, but there was a bit more going on for me. And the second thing that I realized was about how my mindset, when it came to trying to implement something new that was supposed to support me, was the problem. So for example, I found the Intuitive Eating book in a random bookshop back in, I think it was 2009. And I read this book and it blew my mind. I thought, wow, I found my answer. I've been searching for my answer and I finally found it, and I was really excited about it. So I started putting the principles into practice. The binging stopped. I thought, I've licked this. I've done it. Gosh, it was so simple. And then at some point, maybe 2.5, 3 weeks in, I binged. And my mind catastrophized. It was like, I knew it was another thing that wasn't going to work for me, and it just went off on something. And I see this all the time, and I see it a lot with intuitive eating, how people will see themselves as on the wagon or off the wagon. It's this black and white divisive thinking, and pretty much everybody who struggles with binge eating does have a black and white, all or nothing thinking style. So we're likely to think something is amazing or it's terrible, it's good, it's bad. We keep polarizing things, which makes learning anything new really challenging because we get frustrated about it. When I started searching for the middle ground, that was when things started to shift. Now that sounds like, how do I do that? If I'm a black and white thinker, I can't even see the grey. I think it begins just by noticing what you're doing. So I would start noticing when I was saying something was awful, or even when I was saying something was brilliant, I was catching myself and going, oh, maybe, maybe not. Just casting a bit of doubt. I think that's how you start to loosen the roots of black and white thinking. You cast some doubt on whatever it is that you're believing in the moment, because we'll swing. And this kind of thinking style leads us very vulnerable to perfectionism, which means we can procrastinate. That's why it was always tomorrow. It was always tomorrow I was going to confront these difficult feelings. Always tomorrow I was going to do something different. Because with that perfectionistic thinking, it was like I needed this clean slate of tomorrow. I couldn't have like a messy afternoon and then balance out in the evening, because the day was a write-off. I'd labelled that day as bad. I'd labelled the week as bad. And everything was being labelled as good or bad according to usually what I'd eaten. But really realising how problematic this thinking was, how this very thinking style was a big part of what drove this behaviour, made me realise, like, okay, I need to be paying attention to my thoughts. I need to be paying attention to my judgments, because when we're not paying attention, we will just believe them, and our mind will drag us all over the place, and it will make us believe whatever it wants to believe in the moment. And we need to be able to separate ourselves from this unhelpful thinking style. And it begins with noticing, and it begins with that gentle questioning, just doubting yourself a little bit. Because when we feel something and we're believing something and those two seem to line up, it's as if no other possibility exists. And it's reminding ourselves that there are always other possibilities, that most of the things that we believe are stories that we're telling ourselves. And rather than letting our usual thinking pattern decide on what that story is going to be, we can open up other possibilities, other suggestions, other ways of looking at something. And the third thing that I realised, which was quite a painful realisation actually, was I'd spent years searching. I felt like I was on this quest to find the answer, that there must be somebody out there or something out there that I hadn't yet tried that was going to fix this problem. I was looking for my turning point. I was looking for my light bulb moment, because that was what I believe I needed in order to get out of it. And there's an ancient proverb that goes something along the lines of, the treasure that you seek is in the cave you fear to enter. Well, I was that cave. So I think resources are brilliant. I think it's helpful to understand this problem as much as you can, as much as we know about binge eating and what it's like and how to recover from binge eating. But ultimately, the change happens when you start to look inwards. Instead of looking out there for an answer, it's looking inwards. Now that's really difficult when you've got the black and white catastrophic thinking going on, because what it entails is being with yourself, observing yourself, being curious about yourself. And we cannot be curious about ourselves if we're constantly judging and criticizing. So we can notice that our mind is doing that, but we need to shift our relationship, because until we learn to get more comfortable in our mind, we're always going to experience moments of compulsion to escape ourselves. that was one of the things that binge eating gave to me. It gave me an opportunity to escape from how I was feeling, to my sense of disappointment and failure with how I was showing up in the world, the things I hadn't achieved, the beliefs about my body being too big and that being unacceptable to other people. You think you need more knowledge, and a lot of you don't. A lot of you, I meet people all the time, they've read the books, they've watched all the videos, they've listened to the podcasts, they understand like what the things are that are supposed to work when it comes to binge eating recovery. But the implementation of those things is so problematic, and that's because of the black and white thinking, the constant self-judgment, and the belief that because you don't feel ready and you don't feel able to do some of these things, that there just must be a missing piece of information that you've got to find. And maybe there is, but I think that information is probably not out there. It's probably in here. So you might ask, well, how do I do that? Like, how am I supposed to turn inwards? I would say, if you're actually asking that question, it's about spending a bit of time with yourself, a bit of time watching your thoughts. Now, whether you do that as some kind of formal meditation practice, whether you just have a cup of tea in the morning and put your phone down, but we need to get to know these minds, because when we don't know our mind just runs the show and we get dragged along with it. But we have this capacity to watch our minds. It can feel quite scary, I think, or disappointing to realize that actually there isn't a magic answer out there that you just haven't found yet. It's not a quest out there trying to find something that's going to fix you. You don't need fixing. You're just disconnected. You've got different parts of you that are disconnected. You've got part of you that wants to binge, part of you that really doesn't want to binge, part of you that's furious with yourself for binging, part of you that's in despair, and all these different parts are being fractured and activated at different times. When we go in and we're able to look at all those parts and bring them together, that's when we get better at this self-management thing. That's when we can come in as this wise mind and this gentle negotiator to negotiate between the different parts of us that want different things. So those are my top 3 realizations. And I'm conscious that I'm sharing them with you and they're not your realizations. But I was in the hope, I suppose, that they might get you thinking and reflecting so that you can find some answers for yourself, because these are just the things that I needed to learn, and you might have some different lessons. And I don't want to assume that we're all the same and that we all need exactly the same thing to navigate our way out of here. But I hope it was helpful anyway. Thanks for being here, and I will see you on the next video.